Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Near Memo with Mike Blumenthal, the lovely and talented Mike Blumenthal, and me, Greg Sterling. And we are here today to talk about AI overviews, review expectations or expectations versus reality, and also a new Datos report that shows search volumes are unabated even as AI engagement grows. And before we get into this, I want to thank our generous sponsor, GatherUp, for supporting the program, gatherup.com. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast, just reach out to us. Either Mike, what's your email address, Mike? I don't even know.
Blumenthal at nearmedia.co.
Okay, and I'm G Sterling at nearmedia.co, not .com, co. Okay, all right. So, AI overviews continue to be a thorn in the side of the SEO industry and publishers, and there continue to be lots and lots of reports that say when AI overviews appear, which they are appearing in more searches, clicks go down dramatically. And, we're seeing something slightly different in our research, which we can touch on later. But I wanted to draw a distinction between CEOs and the industry, publishers, and ordinary consumers, because consumers like AI overviews as a fundamental matter. I mean, I think they have limited utility in my own experience, but consumers fundamentally like them. Let me just show a quick slide here. This is based on some survey data. Yes,
One
Mike?
of the reasons we're seeing that they like them is it sort of disambiguates the search in a way that helps the user understand whether they're in the right area or not.
Right. So kind of when they're uncertain about what the query should be, the AI overview can be useful. We see some engagement with them in our research, but I would characterize it as limited. David might say, or you might say differently.
I would say that people notice it, comment on it, but don't often click into it.
Right. They don't often click into them. Okay. So this is a slide I did, or not a slide I did. This is from a survey data. It was done in June. This is the percentage of people who had seen an AI overview in a Google search result, 1,000 US consumers, adults, and 91% of people found them helpful, either very helpful, that was the majority, or somewhat helpful. I think there are multiple reasons for this. I mean, there are some cases, some limited number of cases in which they are genuinely helpful and useful, as you described just a second ago. People like the AI experience. They like in the context of AI overviews, it's not super interactive. I mean, you can ask a follow-up question in the form of going into AI mode, but they just like the additional information and the context that it provides. And this is just sort of sobering for people who decry the existence of AI overviews and want to remove them. And I'm not particularly a fan of them, but the public at large really seems to like them.
And I would say that in local, their role and presence is different than in higher top of funnel things.
Yes, for sure.
Where we're seeing them as sort of mid-funnel, where somebody's sort of refining a query and they put in a very long query string that doesn't surface the pack or doesn't surface LSAs. They put in a very long query string. They often will see an AIO that will give them, or if it does surface those other things, give them the confidence to proceed. So that's a different use case. They aren't picking businesses out. And if there is zero-click behavior going on in local, it has little to do with AIOs. It has a lot to do with advertising.
And to some degree, the pack, to some degree. But you're right.
Yes.
At least in this particular vertical that we're working in, LSAs are a massive click drain or click hole or whatever we want to call it.
Yes.
But
clickhole. I don't know. There's something about the word clickhole that borders on the obscene, Greg. I don't know what it is, but
yeah, you're such a clickhole, Mike. But anyway, it's just a sobering thing to see, and there's comparable data that I have that shows people really think Google is getting better. I mean, despite all the grousing and hand-wringing in the industry, there are a lot of people who think that Google is improving and that search results are better now than they've been. And that may be partly about the novelty of AIOs. It may be partly about more search gravitating toward navigation, or
it may be partly
brand.
about Google's dark patterns, which obfuscates what's an ad and what isn't.
Well, that doesn't.
Well, people think it's an organic result and they choose it because even though it's an ad. I mean, so yeah, people
Right, but
like it because
that's a
the ad.
slightly different thing, I would say. I would say that the perception that things are getting better is not necessarily because Google is making ads look more like organic content, but maybe. All right, so let's talk about reviews now, and the whole sort of state of reviews.
So we've been embarked on a project for Mockingbird and Datos Sakalaki's company,
Attorney Sync, Attorney
Attorney
Sync.
Sync. We're doing surveys and research, and we're doing three types of things for them. We're doing surveys of people who, in a hypothetical situation in the legal, people who've actually experienced legal, and we're doing attitudinal surveys with them. And then we're doing behavioral studies of a similar number of people. And what's fascinating to me in this research is the difference between both hypothetical and anticipated behaviors or remembered behaviors versus what we're seeing in the behavioral things vis-a-vis reviews. So again, there's three groups. We're hypothetical,
Right. So
attitudinal surveys, people who've actually experienced something, but again, an attitudinal survey, and then behavioral survey where we give them a task and we watch them.
right,
So the
right.
question is, how do they think they're going to want to do reviews, which is the hypothetical. Whoop, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, so just to clarify, we had a survey in which we split the audience into two groups: people who had actually searched for attorneys and had presumably contacted an attorney, and people who had not had a experience of searching for an attorney. But we asked them questions about how would you look for an attorney and how would you respond to this kind of thing and what channels would you use. So it was essentially a parallel set of questions, and we can compare them. And in some cases, I wouldn't say that in every case the survey data is distinct from the behavioral data. And the behavioral data involves recording people, watching videos, recording all their actions, listening to their narrative. It's not entirely distinct, but there are some circumstances which we're going to talk about in which the attitudes and behaviors are different, and
Right.
specifically reviews.
In the hypotheticals, only 6% said they were looking for 5 stars and 44% wanted 4.5 stars. So that's 50% that wanted 4.5 stars or more.
Right.
32% wanted 4 stars. This is hypothetical. People
Right.
thinking
So
about
we're
what they would want.
we're asking them what is the minimum number or what is the desired number of stars and ratings that you would like to see in a legal, in a lawyer before you would pursue them. What's the minimum? What are the
Right.
thresholds?
And what are
Yeah.
the thresholds? And in people who actually experience legal services, 83% wanted 4.5 stars or higher. So people actually did it, had a memory of looking back and uh, wanted
They
four.
want more. They want more.
They want more, and they set the minimum at at 4.5, and 67% wanted 5 stars. Now this varied somewhat by age group, right? Younger people were more likely to accept fewer reviews and lower ratings. Older people wanted more reviews and higher ratings, but to a large extent, it was consistent. However, in the actual behavioral research we did, the average of people who used reviews to make a decision, the average rating was 4.9, right? Um,
That's the average,
that's the average. So,
not the median,
but
but the average.
the average, right? In terms of the let's see, 120 over
Are you trying to do math right now?
130 over 200. What does that come out to? Wanted
What's the
4.9.
percentage?
What's the percentage of 130 over 200? So it's 13 over 20. It's 6.5 over 10. So 65% selected
Yes, 65%.
4.9,
Very good. Very good. Excellent.
4.9 or higher. And the bulk of them were vast majority of them were 4.8 or higher, right? So, I mean, what people think they would do in terms of ratings, when given a choice between a number of high ratings and other considerations, they typically will lean towards 4.8, 4.9, and mostly 4.9 and 5, right? So one of the things that you pointed out in the green room that this reflects is the general inflation of reviews in the legal categories, which to some extent is due to spam and illegal activities, fake
Fraud.
reviews,
Right.
fraud, which I find interesting. And then which leads us to the question of how many people who value reviews, which everybody says they value reviews, or most everybody, 70% of people say they value reviews. actually read them, and the number is somewhere between is about 1 in 4, 25% or less actually read reviews. And there, though, even if people have a 5.0 or not 5.0, if they have a 4.9, people will go in and read both currency, how recent are they, and will read the negative reviews. And when they do, even, if the complaint is serious or there's several similar complaints, they didn't call me back, and you see that more than once, or they treated me like dirt, people will, on 1 or 2 reviews, reject a 4.9. So there are other things that help them make a distinction there. But what we are seeing is, the people that do read, which isn't that many, are rejecting it based on a few negative reviews. So
Right. You just threw out a ton of information there. So just to recap a little bit. So we had these surveys and people said, I want, at least this kind of review score. And the people who had not actually searched,
hypothetically said 44% said 4.5 or
yeah,
higher,
so the
or
people
50.
who had not actually searched for reviews or searched for lawyers had a lower threshold, lower requirements than people who had actually searched for lawyers. And then the people that we watched, that we observed doing this, had an even higher threshold. And the reason for that is not because surveys inherently fail to capture, the correct information. It's because, as you mentioned earlier, what people are seeing in these ranked legal listings, whether they're LSAs or the local pack, is very, very high review volume and very high scores. I mean, they're 4.7 is a kind of a low threshold in some of these cases. So it's only the highest ranked attorneys that get into the LSA pack and or the local pack. And that conditions people, I think, or prompts them to only consider those highest top percent because they can, because that's what exists.
So essentially what we're seeing is 85, 90% are 4.8 or higher, really, is what we're seeing.
Right. Those are the people that were chosen by our panel in the
Right, those are
behavioral
people that were
research.
chosen. That's correct.
And what's crazy and sort of wrong about that is that there's a lot. I mean, I observed the review fraud. How many lawyers have 5-star ratings with 1,000 reviews or 1,500 reviews or 1,800 reviews? And those exist. And there are enough of them to know that there's either really aggressive review getting going on or fraud. And I looked at many of the reviews, and it's clearly fraud. People
Right.
people
Review
who
gating, my experience with review gating is it does not work. If you got an unhappy customer and you review gate them, they're going to go review you anyways. So
yeah.
they're
So this is just clean fraud. Then it's what it is.
well, what I've noticed in dealing with a couple of legal clients, one of the things they do, which is illegal, is they reach out to clients and offer to pay them to take the review down. So if there is a negative
Right.
review, they work very hard at
Right.
getting it down,
Right.
perhaps with illegal means. So that's one of the ways
Well,
of maintaining a 5.0 average.
yeah, that definitely violates terms of service.
Well, worse, it violates the rules of the FTC, but
Yeah.
not that they're
Well,
enforcing it. So.
yeah, that enforcement, I think, is gone at this point. But what it does is it puts pressure on ethical businesses to do something to match both the volume and the ratings. I mean, how can an ethical business get into that consideration set without cheating in some way? It's very hard to know.
Well, staying sort of corollary to this, though, was roughly 35% of choices occurred through organic, and most of those had no review context. So one way to deal with it is through a compelling title tag, meta description, and great on-site information.
And product schema.
Well, sometimes, but it wasn't the dominant thing. So, but we did
Well,
see it.
yeah, we this is proprietary stuff, so we can't go too much more into it, but there's a
Well,
lot of
if you do want
interesting
more access to this and you are in the legal industry, reach out to Mockingbird or
attorney sync.
Attorney Sync, and I'm sure they'd be glad to chat with you about it.
Yeah. So anything more you want to say about this? I think it's just I think we're in an era where, I mean, Google continues to try and enforce using AI their review guidelines, and they'll take down X number of reviews every year, but it doesn't seem to be fully solving the problem.
Well,
I
and
mean,
part of the
they're
issue
a bit,
is that
yeah.
they look at categories and recency of business as primary indicators to remove reviews when neither one is really a great proxy for fraud.
Yeah. I think it's very, it's surprisingly easy, I think, if you spend any time reading the reviews to identify fraud, because the reviews are really inappropriate to the context of the category. I mean, it was very easy and legal to see these one-line reviews and to just understand at a glance that they were fraudulent. I don't understand why Google can't zap them all. But as we heard from um, in our interview with Brad months ago, who I don't know where he is now, but who used to be in charge of Google support, the aggressive enforcement of the terms creates a burden for Google support, and so they're trying to find a balance between getting rid of spam and fraud, but not creating too much inbound complaints and customer service headaches for their team. So
Although interestingly, I've noticed when you get fake reviews, there's multiple paths to report them. However, with missing reviews, there's one path and it almost never results in the return of the review. So one of the ways they've dealt with taking down reviews and getting complaints in support is to not deal with them. I mean, basically, if it got taken down, tough luck. That was what our algorithm did. You're out of luck.
yeah, Brad Weatherall. I neglected to mention his surname. So
Yes. All right.
all right.
On
So
to
now,
segment 3.
okay, moving on. So Rand Fishkin is out with another Datos clickstream desktop clickstream data report, where he uses data to compare adoption of AI, primarily ChatGPT, but not exclusively, and use of traditional search engines. And the short version is AI is growing, but search volumes are not being impacted. Search is being as widely used, if not more widely used than ever, even as AI sees greater adoption. And this is part of the, Rand is a survey detractor and discounts the value and importance of surveys in favor of the clickstream data. But this is part of the nothing is changing for Google. AI is not displacing Google kind of narrative, bigger pie, right? That's the bigger pie narrative. And on the other hand, you have people that extrapolate from anecdotal experience and the experience of others around them, and to some degree survey data, and say, well, it's impossible for all these people to say they're using AI and not have it impact Google. And ultimately, the experience is better on AI. And so over time, Google will see less usage. So these are two extremes. And I think the truth lies in between. My view is that it's not business as usual at Google. Obviously, Google has radically changed their product, and that reflects their own perception of the threat. And they're trying to preempt the idea that they're going to be displaced. But Google is being used in tandem or as a complement to AI, and enables different use cases. There are people that say it's a completely different animal than search. Well, it's not entirely. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you do on AI that you don't do in Google, but it's not entirely a completely different animal. People are using it to do product comparisons and to look up local information to a degree, and to get certain kinds of information, top of the funnel and otherwise, that they might have gotten from Google. But there is a group of people who are using Google more in the post AI world, and there's a group of people who are using Google less or in different ways. And so I think there's a nuanced discussion that we need to get at, that neither clickstream data entirely reveals, nor, you can sort of get at it in surveys. And I have a bunch of data that sort of hints at what's going on. We've talked about in local, when people aren't getting the information that they want from ChatGPT or Claude or wherever, Perplexity, that they go to Google. So they are using Google to deliver the familiar information that they're used to, because it's not in ChatGPT. If it were in ChatGPT and it were reliable and there were links and maps and all that stuff, which you get sometimes, then their inclination to use Google might be somewhat less. But right now, they're being used together in a complementary fashion.
Yeah. I mean, the end, from a marketer's point of view, it should be about, to some extent, the argument about what it's called reflects the argument about what's actually happening.
Right.
And there's interests, monetary interests in society on both sides of it. But in the end, it should be about marketers driving qualified consumers to a business, and it should be about whether those qualified leads convert and how many of them convert. And it doesn't much matter where they come from. It never has, whether it was Yahoo or there was other competitors or there were other local directories. It's always been that same question. And I think part of this discussion is mute. I mean, in the end, even if Google is cooking the search volume numbers, they're still sending a high percentage of bottom of funnel leads to a business. Businesses still need to track where their leads are coming from. In one client where I actually had them finally start gathering consumer answer to where did you find us or where did you
How
hear
did you hear
about
about
us?
us?
Right, 65% said Google, and about 5 or 8% said chat of some sort or another. Not necessarily ChatGPT, but Copilot, Perplexity, whatever. So about 5%. And the other part of that is that the technology to drive both of them and the technical aspects of your site are largely the same. I don't think there's that much difference. I mean, there's some differences, but the differences are going to apply to Google's LLM as much as they apply to ChatGPT.
There's a question of emphasis, I think. I mean, this is partly about resources. How do you deploy your resources? Where do you focus your attention? So the people who want to call AI optimization, or Garrett Sussman had a post this morning where he was talking about conversational search, and I thought, oh, I haven't seen the term conversational search optimizations. CSO, throw that into the alphabet soup. But partly what's going on in my mind is SEO may be the best term to describe the sort of methodology about gaining exposure in these different channels, but it doesn't fully capture. There are some distinctions, right? I think there's an impulse
And
to
that's been
call
true
this some.
forever, though. It's never captured all of the nuances of what a good marketer might do for a client.
Well, it's true. It's true. SEO is focused on search, and really what people have been doing is trying to optimize their presence across multiple channels, brand optimization or whatever we want to call it. There are some distinctions between getting exposure in, that's the acronym police calling you now. There's some distinctions between getting exposure in an LLM and in Google traditional search results, although they may be substantially overlapping. Maybe it's an 80% overlap, but there are some slight distinctions in this. I don't know when this debate will be resolved. I guess when people standardize around a term. Hopefully it's not geo. I post my little no geo graphic wherever I can whenever I see people using that term. So anyway, I think
a one-man crusade to drive the conversation.
Yes, quixotic, one might say. I think back to the sort of topic, it's not true to say nothing has changed at all. Everything is just the same as it was. Nor is it true to say that Google is going to be displaced anytime soon. But how people use Google and where and how people use ChatGPT or Copilot is interesting and important to understand. And I think there's a dynamic situation in the market. It is not fixed. People's behavior is evolving.
And in terms of tactical response to that, one is set up good analytics, and two, for your customers regularly to see if there's a change in their behavior, because then you'll know where things are happening.
And just understand what sources ChatGPT and others use to, in different categories in your category, create good content. And PR now has some renewed value, which is difficult for most small businesses to engage in. But all the stuff about content chunking and so on and so forth, and embeddings and all of that is far too complex for me. I'll leave that to other people who want to. I mean, I think the important point is everybody's trying to quickly reverse engineer LLMs and do something which approaches sort of spam or game the system. And I think that that's just a mistake. I think people really need to create good content, genuinely help their customers. I mean, I think Google would benefit if Google's admitted that engagement is a key ranking factor, right? If they said, what they've come out and said is, oh, you got to create useful content for people. But if they said create content which engages your customers. Some percentage of people would create
Make
clickbait
them
and
look
other
for the
stuff.
button for 15 minutes before they can
Well,
contact you.
there would be that kind of stuff. There would be that kind of stuff. But keep them on the site as long as you can with confusing pop-ups and other dark patterns. But if Google just came out and said, "Hey, we're going to reward content which is engaging to people as measured by, whatever." I think maybe I'm naive, but I think that would be a net positive for everyone, right? Because you would have to think about what is engaging to our audience, what is important and useful to our audience, as opposed to, you know, the gaming strategies. If you put the thing over here, or if you put it, the SEOs are forced into that mindset because there's so much at stake. But I think if people thought more about what do our customers actually want and need, and how can we actually get them engaged with our content, it would be ultimately a useful thing for everybody. So, are we done?
I think we are.
Okay, on that note, thanks again to GatherUp for sponsoring the podcast, and we will continue to reveal more to the extent that we can about this research that we're doing, which is fascinating, which does have implications for other verticals, and you can see us talking about it to some degree, or to a reasonable degree, but not too much, at Local SEO for Good. We'll be revealing some of the information and what it means in a larger general search behavior context. Oh for Good is put on by Bright Local. You can go to their site, and it's coming up, I think, next week, in fact. Yikes. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends, and come back and see us next time.